Happy Tuesday, September 9th. Today we're going to be talking about Deuteronomy 17, and we're actually going to start at the end of 16, verses 21 and 22 of chapter 16, because they go with the rest of 17, 1 through 7, that same paragraph. What I don't get is how they had the ability to make these two verses part of chapter 17 because they cover the same subject. And instead they put them in the previous chapter. But we're the ones translating it that came up with the verse, paragraph, sentence structure of this. And it's like, well, we could have done it that way. Why didn't we? Because it's been like 1,000 years at this point. And now it's like, if you change that, how big of a deal is that? But it would make more sense to have these in 17. And there's some other books like that too. But anyway, to the actual content we go. So, 16 verse 21 and 22. You shall not plant any tree as an Asherah beside the altar of Yahweh your God that you shall make, and you shall not set up a pillar, which Yahweh hates. And this isn't just about God being jealous. He is a jealous God because there are imposters misleading people. And he doesn't like that. Pretty easy to see why. But we're going to talk about some of the things that the Canaanites would do that the Israelites were kicking out of the land, that God would have thought were abominable, that he brings up several times. So Asherah poles, Asherah, the goddess, the queen of heaven, or the mother of creation, a lot of times they would try to pair Asherah up with Baal or Asherah up with Yahweh as mother and father of creation. And God doesn't like that. He doesn't like it when you put another God on level with him, especially when it's a false God. But people did that. And at these Asherah poles, a lot of what they would do was prostitution and orgies, illicit sex. That was something that God did not like. Now, you don't really get specific commands about you only have sex in marriage, but that's kind of the whole point of marriage and having one wife, is that you become one flesh with your wife, and sex is part of that. One example would be Balaam. He goes in and talks to I can't remember the name of the people. It wasn't the Moabites. It was just Canaanites. And they wanted him to curse Israel. And he's like, I can't. Yahweh said not to. I can't do it. Well, you think that's the end of the story, but it's not. The guy was a knucklehead. He came back and said, actually, if you want to hurt these people, what you need to do is have your young women go out there and, seduce the men and tell them to worship gods that way. And that ended up costing 24,000 Israelites their lives, including the one that Phinehas just kind of stuck with a spear while they were engaging in coitus. Some other things that Canaanites would sometimes do, and I don't know if this was at the Asherah poles or not, but they would offer their children to the gods. So child sacrifice, also bad. And bury them under the foundation of a house being built. Now, all of these things go against the design that God had for the world and God had for us. That makes it sin. When God says don't do it and we do it. It's kind of interesting thinking about society today and how we still deal with this stuff. When you have a goddess trying to become the same level as Yahweh, the queen of heaven, the mother of creation. There's a feminist slant to that, and we're dealing with that a lot today. Prostitution and orgies, we're dealing with that a lot today. Sex is transactional. You got OnlyFans. There's nothing new under the sun. And then you have child sacrifice. You hear the stories about Aztecs killing, 70,000 people in one day, of killing children and killing people and eating their hearts. Like, sacrificing people was never what God wanted. And then you can think of abortion today. When people are like, well, I don't want a kid, I'm just going to kill it. All this stuff is the same as it's been for thousands of years. And I think it grieves God the same today as it did then. But continuing on into chapter 17, you shall not sacrifice to Yahweh your God an ox or a sheep in which there is a blemish, any defect, that is an abomination. Why? Because you're supposed to offer the best to God, not what you didn't want. If there is found among you anyone within your towns that Yahweh is giving you, a man or woman that does evil in the sight of the Lord, in transgressing his covenant, and has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, and you hear, but you need to inquire diligently, which means you don't get to be a vigilante. You have to investigate this. But if it's taken place, then you bring them out your gates and you stone them to death. In Deuteronomy, the phrase was, they'll be cut off from their people. Same thing. This is about purity. This is about keeping the people of Israel pure, keeping the covenant that God had with the people. On the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses, the one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. Now that kind of carries over to modern times. You needed to have more than 1 witness because 1 person can lie. If you have multiple people that have all seen it, the chance that they're lying is less. The hand of the witnesses shall be the first against him, and afterward the hand of all the people. So you didn't just get to accuse someone, then you had to mete out the punishment. Maybe you can lie, but can you then kill them? If you're lying about them, that becomes murder. So then you have 2 things. Verse 8. If any case rises among requiring a decision between one kind of homicide and another, one kind of legal right or another, one kind of assault and another, any case within your towns that is too difficult for you, you shall rise up and go to the place that Yahweh your God will choose, and you shall come to the Levitical priests and to the judge who is in office in those days, and you shall consult them. They shall declare to you the decision. So the Levites were the people that were going to be teaching people the law and kind of administering it, because they were the ones that would know it the best, hopefully. According to the instructions that they give you, and according to the decision which they pronounce to you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside from the verdict that they declare to you, either to the right hand or the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not obeying the priest who stands to minister there before Yahweh your God or the judge, that man shall die. So if you're going to take a case to them, that was a binding resolution, I guess. You couldn't not do what they said. What would be the point of bringing it and then not doing it? So you shall purge evil from Israel, and all the people shall hear and fear and not act presumptuously again. Laws concerning the kings. When you come to the land that Yahweh your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. It's almost like they said those exact words. You may indeed set a king over you, whom Yahweh your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since Yahweh has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away. Nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. So, the king was not to extract high prices of taxes from people. Why? Because he's supposed to be serving them. He's supposed to be leading them, not getting rich off of this. In America today, we have that issue again. So, not acquire many horses. Not send people to Egypt to get many horses. So he's not supposed to make bad deals to make himself rich that hurt the people. Again, you're supposed to be serving the people, not, how can I get rich? How can I mess with these people and enslave them so I can get what I want? We have examples of that happening. He shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away. Now, it's not really in there that you have one wife. I really wish it was. But sometimes I think the law is like the minimum standard. Like, a good person isn't going to be, hey, I need to own a lot of people. But if you're going to go that route, you need to treat them with respect because they're people made in the image of God. If you're going to get married, one wife. Why? Because then you can love and treasure her. If there's 2, it's like serving God and man. You can't do both because you're going to hate one and love one. the times where this happened in the Old Testament, where they had multiple wives, I don't know of a single occasion where it turned out well. Because one wife they loved more, one wife they loved less. And the wives knew that. And then the kids, there was so much drama among the kids. It was a disaster. And I really wish it had just been in there, like black and white. I like it when things are black and white. Have one wife. Love her, serve her, make her happy. She's your wife. Don't chase anybody else. That would have been pretty cool to find out. Now we see some of that stuff in the New Testament, especially when it comes to if you want to be a deacon, an overseer, elder, whatever. But I just wish it had kind of been there in the Old Testament. And then people can't say, well, they didn't say you can only have one wife. It's like, that's not the point. Anyway, so returning to the kings, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law approved by the Levitical priests, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it in all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Yahweh his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers. He don't think he's better than everyone, that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. So that sounds a lot like, your word have I hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you, which David wrote. It's kind of like when we have Bibles. We get to read this. Now, God's not saying he has to read this every day. What he's saying is, it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life. We get to read this. Why? So that we get to know God. We get to know what God wants. I think it's a blessing to have this. And I'm sure we all have like 5, 6, 12 Bibles in our homes. That is a blessing. And we should definitely be reading it more and definitely applying it more in our lives. So tomorrow or in a few days, we'll go over chapter 18. So I will talk to you then. Have a good day.